A middle-aged woman took a loan from Kenya Women Finance Trust. She defaulted for 3 months. It accumulated to 30,000 Kenyan shillings. Microfinance officials visited her home, demanding to take over her pregnant cow. She declined, resulting to a quarrel with her husband, and then she committed suicide. Welcome to Nahash and Kimemia Live. A special shout out for Lewis K for suggesting this topic. It's a continuation of the earlier series on the family. He suggested it via YouTube comments. Suggest a topic, just comment below the video. Send me an inbox. Thank you to all my 1,132 subscribers. Please subscribe and share these videos. Do not hide a light where there is darkness. Ask questions during the live show. Ask me just by commenting in the comment section. So I will begin. What is socialism? It is both an economic system and an ideology. It's an economic system because it is an organized way of allocating resources for the production of goods and services. For example, the government identified that people earn salaries, and that is a resource. So it decided to take 1.5% of their gross salary to raise 48 billion annually and to build houses with that money. That is the system they chose to build houses. Agenda 4, housing. Socialism is an ideology. It is a way of thinking that is based on certain ideals. For example, there is this idea of universal healthcare, that everyone can have access to healthcare. Currently, we are at a universal healthcare index of 50%. We hope to be at a UHC, universal healthcare index, at 60% by 2030. And we're aiming for 100% at the end of all these programs initiated by Uhuru. So there's an ideal, and we're trying to move towards that ideal. So the basic, my summary of this description of socialism is this. Many people are suffering. We can come together as a society. We can create a system to mobilize resources to end that suffering. But here's something. This guy, Winston Churchill, he once said, socialism is a philosophy of failure, the creed of ignorance, and the gospel of envy. So yes, he agreed. There are ideas behind it, but he called it a philosophy of failure. A socialist economy features social rather than private ownership of the means of production. The means of production, these are physical and non-financial resources. Again, we're still talking about resources, and they include raw materials, facilities, machinery, and tools. And people use these resources to produce goods and services, and they must have economic value. Otherwise, you're doing nothing. And otherwise, why would the people want them? And I have this example, the Kenya Ordnance Factories Corporation. It's a state-owned defense corporation. Have you ever heard of it? Perhaps you know that we manufacture ammunitions in just near Eldoret here in Kenya. And it's the only ammunition manufacturer in Kenya. So how much do you know about this factory? How much ammunition does it produce? Who buys its ammunition? I am a Kenyan, but I know about Lockheed Martin. It manufactures arms for the United States. The US gave it 38.4 billion. That's 85% of its revenue. Foreign governments gave it 5.8 billion. That's 13% of its revenue. And commercial firms, others, they gave it 0.9 billion, 2% of its revenue. I am a Kenyan, I know about the US. I do not know about Kenya, where they have mobilized resources in Eldoret and they are producing goods of economic value and they're using my taxes, but I don't know about that. And I wanted to give you another example of another great person. His name was John F. Kennedy, and this is what he said. The very word secrecy is repugnant to a free and open society. The dangers of excessive and unwarranted concealment of pertinent facts far outweigh the dangers which are cited to justify that concealment. In other words, why are they hiding this information? And why are other governments revealing the information that they have about their arms manufacturing? There is a problem. Socialism typically organizes economic activity through planning rather than market forces. For example, we have 14 active tanneries in Kenya. A tannery is the one that processes leather. We have a leather park that was just completed, according to the government, in Kinanie, Machakos County, and it was 7 billion worth. And what we wanted was to build 36 tanneries there, which would is a substantial increase from the 14 tanneries that we have. But first we'd start with 20 and then build up to that 36 at that Machakos tannery. And then we have 6 more tanneries at Wajir, Garissa, Makueni, Isinya, Mogotia, and Kanduni. A funny thing, the majority of tanneries favor remaining at their current bases. They don't favor moving to the operations at Machakos. So who are we building these tanneries for? The effluent load will affect at the river. So how much did we think about the environmental impact of this tannery, of this leather park, before we built it? Maybe we should have done more research before we built it. Maybe we should evaluate its returns before we build the others in Wajir, Makueni, and the other places that we're planning to build them. Perhaps we should. Socialism gears productions towards needs, satisfaction, rather than profit accumulation. For example, 2.76 million bags of maize, right? Yes, is what we wanted. The government wanted to grow. It was one of their agendas by the end of 2018, right? That was maize, potatoes, rice, and feeds in 52,000 acres of land. That is what the government wanted. But the private sector would ask, how much money can you make out of this investment, out of this production? It won't care about the number of bags you can produce. Because if you can produce one bag, make millions of profits, millions of cash, then perhaps you don't need to produce 10,000 or 2.7 million bags. And the private sector would say, you do not produce if you cannot make profit off the products. But you see, socialism works differently. When you are in government and you have an idea, you just do it. You do not have to answer questions, the rate of return, the environmental impact, why producers don't want to move to your facility. You don't have to answer those questions. You don't have to reveal your secrets. All you have to claim is that I'm doing it for the common good. And remember, it is not your money. You can actually benefit from implementing the project, regardless of whether the people benefit. Also, for anyone that has money, they know that the first rule is to use other people's money. I got that from Kanye West. And perhaps our leaders know that they would use our money to make money for themselves. What are the consequences of socialist policies in Kenya? The first one is inefficiency. For example, the construction of the 10,000 acre model farm, Kalulu, the irrigation project, right? Galana Kululalu, right? It commenced on 11 September 2014. Government took cash from an Israeli bank and paid it to an Israeli company to build for us that irrigation scheme. And it took the company 4 years to complete the irrigation infrastructure for 5,000 acres. And it was for 10,000 acres. So Thika Road was built in less than 4 years. But these guys did half the project in 4 years. The government produced 22,000 bags of maize. That was worth 35.2 million Kenyan shillings. The official government figures, they say that they produced slightly over 100,000 bags, 189 million. So even if you go with the 189 million, the spending on the project was 7.3 billion, the projected spending. And I think they already spent around 5 billion. So what the government even claims that it produced, it's only 2.59% of the cost after 4 years. How efficient is that system? The second consequence of socialism is corruption. I will call it Ruto's dam. It's the current dam that everybody is talking about. And it's how much? 21 billion. Given off without guys ever being on the site. Given off for a thicket of land. Remember, you don't have to answer questions. You just have to have an ideas and say it is for the common good. The National Cereals and Produce Board, a recent scandal, 1.9 billion. The National Tree Planting Program, targeting primary school kids, 2 billion. Again, all done for the common good. Another consequence of socialism, nepotism and tribalism. For example, Uhuru appointed 5 Nyachai family members to top parastatal jobs. Nyachai was the son of a colonial chief, employed at his father's chief's camp as a district clerk in 1954. He served as a district officer, as a district commissioner, as a provincial commissioner under Kenyatta. Under Moi, he was a minister of agriculture and a minister of finance. Under Kibaki, he was a minister for energy. And 5 of his progeny are now in top parastatal jobs. For example, Nyachai's nephew, Christopher Ayenda, he's a board member at the new Kenya Cooperative Creameries, KCC. I just drank the milk. I like it. Nyachai is the descendant of a colonial chief. And his sons are with us today, holding the top jobs in our government. There's one thing that this guy said. The rich will do anything for the poor, but get off their backs. They will never leave, they will never go away, they will never create space. They will fill it with their progeny. And they will always be on our backs. And this guy, his name is Karl Marx. So Susan Wakuhungu is the sister of the former environment CS, Judy Wahungu. She was appointed as executive chairperson of the Kenya Yearbook editorial board. So my question was, why do we have a Kenya Yearbook? And why is the government spending money on this thing? Again, no questions asked. All you have to say, it's for the good of the people, regardless of whether it's bringing in returns or if it's viable in any other way. Why should we not leave this yearbook to the private sector? If the private sector makes money off it, good for them. If they don't make money off it, we haven't wasted our resources. And if we leave it to the private sector, it might reveal some inefficiencies, because if it fails to make profit, then perhaps people do not need it. But the sister of an education environment, yes, formal environment, yes, has to have a job, and there has to be an excuse for it. Another consequence of socialism, increase in taxation. We had a budget, 3 trillion budget for the 2018-2019 fiscal year. KRA only collected 1.4 trillion between 2017 and 2018. By what miracle would we expect it to collect to cover the deficit in 2018 and 2019? How much can it collect it in this fiscal year? So the government is under pressure to collect more taxes, to fund the operations of the devolved system of governance, and to fulfill election pledges, including free primary education, free secondary education, and the big four. A clear example, the National Housing Development Fund. I've mentioned this, the 1.5% mobilization of resources from salaried workers. It is there to fund the house, one of the agenda 4s, which is housing. So if you earn a salary of 100,000 per month, then you'd be giving the government 1,500 every month for a house that you may never own, and for money that may be lost at some point. In a year, you'll be transferring 18,000 of your income to the government. In 3 years, you would have transferred 54,000 to the government. Now imagine the opportunity cost of this transfer. For example, if you have, let's say, a brother in Form 2 or Form 1, and you have 54,000 after 3 years, you can actually buy a second-hand motorbike. You can train him with some of that cash, and you can get your relative out of poverty with just 1.5% of your income. So how many people can you get out of poverty if the government stops transferring your income to itself and then eating it? Do you see how much socialism hurts us? How much we could have done so much more if it wasn't with us? Margaret Thatcher, a great woman, she once said, "The trouble with socialism is that eventually you will run out of other people's money. They cannot tax you forever, but they will try." And when the lie is too obvious, when the project is not going anywhere, when even the ideal saying that it is for the common good no longer works, the projects will simply collapse, and collapse with the income that you transfer to the government. 24.6 billion laptops project collapsed. 7 billion Galana Kulalu project collapsed. 300 million fish project in central Kenya collapsed. There was a factory within that project, 60 million. Wamagana fish processing plant collapsed. The figures that I've mentioned add up to 31.9 billion. And those are just 3 scandals. The cost of the Thika highway was 32 billion. Help loans, the guys who have defaulted, the 74,000. That's 7 billion. Gulana alone can take care of that, and you would have changed the lives of 74,000 Kenyans immediately. But instead, you have a collapsed irrigation scheme down at the coast because of socialism. Another consequence of socialism, poverty. We have implemented these projects for, in my opinion, from 1963, Pan-African socialism. Until today, the big 4, Kenyans are living on less than $1.9 a day. Many Kenyans. In 2005, it was 46.8%. In 2015, it's 36.1%. So we can say that we have moved. At the current pace of poverty reduction, we'd only move 1 percentage point per year. And what does that mean? That means it would take 36 years to eradicate poverty in Kenya. I would be 67 years old at that time. How old will you be? Will we wait that long to get people out of poverty? Can you wait that long to get yourself out of poverty? Personally, I cannot. Mahatma Gandhi said, poverty is the worst form of violence. I am tired of being beaten by this government and by socialism. The other consequence of socialism is the lack of opportunity. As you can tell, most of these socialist policies, they are collapsing. There are no opportunities for employment. A lot of money is going to waste. So the transfer of income from yourself to the state is unproductive. The state continues to dream up more and more projects, and they keep on saying, this will work this time. And these projects lead to additional waste of time, of resources, and of income. But the state keeps asking for more. And it keeps telling you that it is for the common good. And this is what Friedrich Nietzsche said. Everything the state says is a lie. And everything it has stolen. I will go to Uhuru's War on the family. When there is no way out for the poor. Taxes are insufficient to support socialism. Again, Margaret Thatcher. The problem with socialism is that you'll always run out of other people's money. So borrowing is necessary. And other development partners have to come into play to fund our projects, including universal healthcare. For example, the World Bank contributed $2 billion to that program. How much do we owe to the IMF? How much do we owe to China? How much do we owe to the African Development Bank? How much do we owe to all of these people for unproductive projects, for collapsing projects, for a failing economic system known as socialism? Our children will pay for these debts. So we are not even content in enslaving ourselves. We must enslave our children as well. Isn't that a crime against the future? The future of our generation. Socialism, it wreaks havoc in the business sector. Inflation rises. People no longer have that purchasing power to buy your goods and to buy your products. There is low demand. People are no longer confident in the economy. They'd rather keep their money. They don't want to risk it. And corruption grows. As the government expands, the entrepreneurs expand their income by taking it from the poor, by taxing us, by mobilizing our resources and rewarding themselves. So taxes and regulations will always increase under a socialist system. You'll be paying for NEMA, Music Corporate Society, Nairobi City Council, presumptive tax. You'll be paying for everything at an increasing rate. And this is what this young lady says. She was young at her time. Anne Rand. We are fast approaching the stage where the government is free to do anything that it pleases, while the citizens may act only by permission. The government will come up with any project that it wants. But if you want to set up a project, you must ask for permission. And you can see there are restrictions in the movement of money for the common good to fight terrorism. So you must say where that money comes from. You must ask for permission before you do something. And that is dangerous. So it's as is a characteristics of socialism. Employment is out of self-employment is out of the way. Employment is the only way that people feel that they can now earn income. Because when the economy does not expand, then starting up new businesses becomes difficult. Many people might have that dream of starting a business. Many people might intend to start a business, but the number of people who will succeed at it, the number of people who maintain for some time, it will be low. And everybody will run to jobs. And most specifically, they will run to the government, where there's security of tenure, where questions are not asked as much as they are in the private sector. And you will get a job. Not everyone will, because the government can only employ so many people. The private sector can only employ so many people. But it will give you a head start in life. But at what cost? For example, some people have to provide some things for work. Like many women are asked for sex when it comes to work. And that's a terrible thing. But it's something that's common in our society. And where do they run to? To the same government that has forced them to move towards a particular direction when they could have moved in another way if there was freedom in the business sector. If the government wasn't so important in their lives, if tenders weren't everything, and if corruption wasn't that bad. But now they have been pushed into a corner. What will they do? What can they do? Some people, they go to work without pay. Somebody wakes up in the morning, wears a suit, goes into a matatu, all the while knowing that he hasn't been paid his salary for 3 months, for 2 months, for 1 month. And we have a Ministry of Labor. So people are suffering, and they know that if they leave that job, they might not get another one. Or if they leave it, then the little income that they had, they might not receive it ever again. So they maintain based on hope. And every day we see people going with suits to town, to other areas. But who knows if they receive payment? They have families, they have food to eat, they have bills to pay. But guys are not paying them. And we have a conflict resolution department at the Ministry of Labor. Why aren't they working? All wealth is the product of labor. This is what John Locke said. So everybody that has wealth, everybody that is balling, there's some labor that went into providing them with that. In Kenya, some people might take your labor and they build wealth on it, but they will never compensate you for what you did. And yet we have a government. So what happens when people are pushed in one particular direction? When trying this other route is so hard, society comes under stress, and it results in chaos and injustice. The poor start becoming rebellious. We have seen cops being beaten, and they seek change. Others sought change through Raila. Other guys are thinking that perhaps Boniface Mwangi can bring that change. People just want change from whatever direction it comes. But the reality is, most of these guys, they are okay with the system as it is. because they are eating. And you see, here's the thing. As time goes, the rich there's a growing disaffection with the poor. They keep wondering, what's up with these poor people? Why aren't they working hard? Why aren't they paying their taxes? Why aren't they doing this and that? And because they speak from a privileged position of closeness to the government. And that is why they can impose 5,000 per month penalties on HELP students without blinking an eye. That is why they can say that the police should go after HELP defaulters without blinking an eye. Because the 7 billion of the resources mobilized to build that Gulana irrigation project, it wasn't their money. It was money mobilized from us. And it was given to them. And they eat. And they want more. So they are wondering, why aren't you giving them more? And so what they will do, they will assume roles meant for the parents and for the church to teach these people how to behave. They will take over schools and the education system. And the government is, from 1963 up to this date, it has kept on taking over schools, pushing the church aside, even though the church started those schools. The government will determine what is the best way for you to live, and it will not do anything about it. Because it wants to, it cannot understand why you are not giving it additional cash. It cannot understand why you're not doing this. In theory, it is for your good. So now you have to be pushed towards doing that. And one way of doing that is through population control. That the poor are becoming too many and they're becoming a bit rebellious. So we need to control their population. And the excuse that they will give is that it is for your own good. That you cannot have many children because you cannot feed them. And why is it hard for you to feed them? Because somebody is mobilizing your resources, taking them, putting them in collapsing projects, and then coming back and asking for more. And they will keep asking and asking and asking. But if you gain those numbers, you might overthrow somebody. You might gain power and traction. So there has to be some kind of control. Mobility and taxes. Let me give you that example. When the colonialists increased taxes, they increased ways of identifying citizens, of controlling their movement. And that is an example of Huduma number. A consequence of socialism, as you have seen, is an increase in taxation. But people will resist that increase. Like people try to resist the 16% increase in fuel tax. Guys try to, the presumptive tax on businesses. Guys try to resist that. And some might resist by hiding from the system. But if you have an identification system, then you can catch them very quickly, very easily. But that system is for your good. It is to fight terrorism, to improve your security. We already have IDs. And one of the reasons why you don't have adequate security is not because of us, but because of people in the same government corrupt. Like the car registration plates. Yes. But it is for your own good. Profiting from prisoners. Like today, what we have is that companies can come and they hire prisons. Prisons now use that forced labor prisoners to earn profit. And improve facilities at the prisons, make them self-sufficient. And that is the reason that they always give. It's always a good reason. But it was done. The gulags in Russia, the concentration camps in Germany, and there are also similar kind of activities when it came to the blacks. I just can't remember the name of that, but it was done. After they ended slavery, they brought in a system where they conscripted prisoners and they used them to profit off them. And they actually created a market for prisoners in the US. And that is what we were trying to do in Kenya. And this is what this guy says, Ben Shapiro. Socialism turns government into God, and it legalizes thievery. That you can steal from the people legally, and all you need to do is to just bring in new projects, and then they collapse. And then guess who had the contracts before they collapsed? Who supplied the materials and whose children were at the top of those parastatals or those projects? Legalizing thieveries and turning government into God. And if government is God, then the people in government are small gods. And the degree of their divinity varies with the position and influence in government. That is why a government official can talk to you the way they want, as if you don't pay taxes. That's why nurses can slap around patients when they're giving birth at maternity facilities. That's why police can commit extrajudicial killings, and that's why they can beat you up. Because they are small gods. That's why governors can kill and murder and get away with it, because they are small gods. And think about it. Anytime people say, Najua watu, do they speak about people in the private sector? They speak mostly about people in the government. Or they speak about people they know who know people in the government. The government becomes a god under socialism. And the people don't have a self-defense mechanism against that god. If you go to court, Ahmed Nasir was saying that court cases are 50 million in some cases. The Kidora case, we had bribes of 200 million. Perhaps there are others. For the small people, that's 1 million or 2 million. I am not even the small people. I cannot afford that. Can you? So you cannot go to the legal system because already there's corruption in that system. And you cannot defend yourself because you cannot bear arms. And why is it difficult for you to bear arms? Well, it's for your own safety. Because if too many people have them, there will be chaos, there will be anarchy. Don't we already have chaos? Don't we already have anarchy? If 10 good people bear arms, can they not deal with 2 bad people who bear arms? Again, it's for your own good, but in reality, it's to control you. Because you might resist the oppression. You might resist the corruption. Even if a judge gives a corrupt ruling, you have means to resist that ruling. And the powers cannot have that. So there is no way out for the poor. They fall under depression and they fall under despair. The number of suicides reported in Kenya rose by 58% between 2008 and 2017. 80 people committed suicide in Kenya in August 2018. 93.7% of those 80 people committed suicide because of stress, depression, and mental illness. Where can these people go to? Perhaps the church. That woman that I started the introduction with, 30,000 loan, she's stressed. Perhaps she cannot pay it. Why didn't she go to the church for solace, for compassion, perhaps even for help? Because the church is at war with the family. People go to church for different reasons. Some are good reasons, some are bad reasons. The good reasons for going to church: peace. Depending on your church or church group, you will find peace if you go to church. For confession, perhaps if you're cheating on your spouse, it may be weighing heavily on you, you might go and confess. Perhaps you are too angry with your spouse, perhaps you need to go and confess. Perhaps you go to church to receive the Eucharist, which is the most important function when it comes to Catholics, of going to church. You need to go to church to reaffirm your faith and to keep the fight going. For example, perhaps you need patience with your spouse. Your spouse is irritating you, and perhaps you want to be patient with them, but you don't have that strength. You might find that strength in church. You might also go to church for counseling and for arbitration. Somebody to sit you down and talk to you guys. For it is written, "Come to me and I will give you rest." But there are also unhealthy reasons for going to church. For example, some people go to church as an insurance policy. We all know that we might need help at some point in life. We all know that. So we might go to church as an insurance policy for when we will need that help. And the problem with doing that is that we will start focusing on contributions. How much has he removed for contribution? How much has she removed? How much has she removed for contribution? Because we are looking at it from our own perspective. At one point, we may need to remove. So we really focus on what people are removing so we can have estimates. And so perhaps we can encourage people for that day when we may need help. Some people go to church seeking marriage. And the problem with that is that if you left the club to go to the church to seek a husband and whatever, or a wife, then that club mentality might come with you. And that is where cases where you'll find people are in church, but they're doing certain things that they should not be doing, talking, discussing certain things that they should not be discussing, because they came there seeking something else, perhaps a boyfriend, perhaps a girlfriend, perhaps love. The club mentality will not go away just because you went to church. Seeking friendships. You go to church to look for friends, to become popular, or those other things. The problem with that is that willingness to do wrongful things to maintain friendships will still maintain. It will still be with you. And that is why when you go to church, you might find people doing certain kinds of stuff, even though they don't want to, but they want to keep their friends. And that is why it is written, "Seek ye first the kingdom of God, and everything else shall be added unto you." Go for the right reasons. All this other stuff will come slowly. Do not force it. Entire families are skipping church. There was a family I was giving advice to, and I gave them a list of things they might do to get themselves out of certain kinds of problems. And the last item that I said that is you need to go back to church. And the response was saddening. Because they told me that the church kept on asking and asking and asking, and they did not have anything to give. And whenever they did not give, guys thought that they were selfish. Guys talked, and guys looked at them funny. So they decided to just give it up and pray at home. And that is usually a big problem, because from what I know, when pastors go broke, then that weekend they'll preach about tithe. And it is written, Alas for you, scribes and Pharisees, you hypocrites! You shut up the kingdom of heaven in people's faces, neither going in yourselves, nor allowing others to go who want to. In other words, guys are locking people from coming to church and from meeting Christ in church. In this case, he says they will not get in, but it's even worse that they will not allow others to get into heaven. And from the example I can give, you can get that it's not that they did not want to go to church. It's not that they could not go to church. It's because of the pressure put upon them. It was because of the lack of empathy. They're going through so much and they cannot find peace there. Because when they go there, then there are additional problems, additional pressures. The weight of those who contribute the most is greater than that. The weight of thoughts of those who contribute the most is usually greater than that of other people. If somebody has an idea and it contributes the most in church, then people are more likely to go with that idea, even if it's a bad one. Because it seems even money matters when you go to church, not just in government. People run church groups and church activities as their personal property. They actually take it personally, as though you're interfering with their home, with their wife, with their children. And that brings in reactionary pressure. Because when they react, they won't react in a peaceful Christian kind of way. They might react with hatred. And people who have paid tithe, they go to the front for blessings. I never saw this when I was young. You know, come and then we bless you. And I'm always thinking, what about the people who are sitting at the back? They deserve blessings for what they have brought to the church. Alas for you, blind guides, you say, if anyone swears by the temple, it has no force. But anyone who swears by the gold of the temple is bound. Fools and blind, for which is of greater value, the gold or the temple that makes the gold sacred? When people bring what they can, and when people bring in the tithe, what is the difference? Does this tithe have some magical formula that now they have brought it, now their blessings will be opened? And many people say you cannot succeed until you bring it. Or when you bring it, the doors of heaven will open. And it reminds me of this verse, right? If anyone swears by the temple, it has no force, but anyone who swears by the gold of the temple is bound. When you bring a percentage, it has more weight than when you bring what you can. I don't believe that is from my God. Disposable income, some people do not have a lot of it. You may have it, so you may think that everybody has it. Why are they not contributing? Shida yao ni gani? For example, you might have 100k, 50k expenses, 10k for the tithe, and take 10k for church contributions. You are left with 30k. Right? The woman that Jesus was speaking about, that she gave all that she had, perhaps she had 18 coins worth of expenses and 2 copper coins worth of offering. You have 30k left. Another person perhaps has 200 bob. Never measure your generosity by what you give, but rather by what you have left. Archbishop Fulton Sheen. That is him. And this is the question I ask. Where is your spirit of understanding? Where is your compassion? Where is your mercy? Reason and faith do not contradict. Christianity and socialism are opposite sides of the same coin. I do not understand where a church can sit by as socialism picks up or the church can teach socialism, like socialist projects, and then knowing that those socialist projects, they deplete disposable income. So disposable income is being depleted. The church is either preaching socialism, right, or not telling us to guard against it, and then it's still preaching tithe. So again, you're increasing the pressure on the people, and the government is already pressuring the people. The church's war on the family, hypocrisy. Whoever bids other folks to do right, but gives an evil example by acting the opposite way. It is like a weaver who weaves quickly with one hand and then unravels the cloth just as quickly with the other hand. Saint Thomas More said that. So there was a priest serving at Kiambaa parish in Githunguri, Kiambu, right? He was fond of inviting young women to his residence and then seducing them. The residents would host parties where the girls would receive alcohol. Some of the victims were minors. When the victims got pregnant, the priest helped them to procure abortions. In one incident, he gave them 40,000 for an abortion. How can the church teach morality when it is turning into a symbol of immorality? How can people expect to benefit from its teachings when the teachers aren't benefiting from it? Where will you send your child for harmless activities if you cannot send them to church? Again, alas, you scribes and Pharisees, you hypocrites, you travel over sea and land to make one single convert. And anyone who becomes a convert, you make twice as fit for hell as you are. In other words, you endanger the soul of your followers because of hypocrisy, and that needs to stop, and to stop quickly. The church's war on the family, religion. During this, piece on the church, I'm not speaking about the Catholic Church. I'm speaking about let's say the church in general, right? I'm just using the word church. Many churches, there's great confusion and hypocrisy within the church, that we already know. There are conflicting doctrines, practices, and results. The results in one church are not the same as the results in another church. Which is the right church? Is it Catholic? Is it Anglican? Is it SDA? Is it Jesus is Alive Ministries? Is it Neno Evangelism? Which is the right one? In this confusion, people reject religion and embrace spirituality. And many preachers are turning to that. When you do that, there is a failure to know that some things exist. And then you can also reject the good while rejecting the bad. Cicero said, when he was speaking about the origin of religion, he said that religion derives from the word relegere, to treat carefully. In other words, when it comes to matters of God, you are treating those matters carefully, not like any other thing that you do. Saint Augustine said that we have lost God through neglect. We recover him religentis and are drawn to him. In other words, religion is a way of recovering God, of redeeming ourselves because we have lost him. Lactantius said that religion comes from the word religare, to bind. In other words, religion binds us to God. So you can see, treating religion, the matters of God, carefully, recovering our lost glory, let's say losing God, and then binding ourselves to God. The most accurate is binding ourselves to God. Religion binds us to God. And in the scripture it is written, pure, unspoiled religion in the eyes of God our Father is this: coming to the help of orphans, widows, and keeping oneself uncontaminated by the world. So the Bible actually contemplates religion. So why are people fighting religion? Why are people saying that I'm not religious? I am. spiritual? Why are they saying that when the Bible contemplates pure and unspoiled religion? Why aren't people moving towards pure and unspoiled religion? The religion that binds us to God. The religion that helps us redeem ourselves. The religions where we treat the matters of God carefully. Why are people not moving towards that day? When you leave this world, will you leave spirituality for your kids? What if your kids stray? What will your grandkids find? Religion gives them something to find. Religion gives them something to look for even after they have strayed. They can come back home. Spirituality will die with you. The spirit moves back to God the Father and will resurrect and perhaps recover it, right? But it's not something that you can hand over to the next generation, but you can hand over religion. There is one truth, one way, and one life. People have different perceptions of spirituality. It is not one. God is a God of order. Is there anything orderly about everyone having their own kind of spirituality? Religion, pure and unspoiled, moves you closer to God. It treats the matters of God carefully. It helps you redeem yourself. And it binds you to God. And it will bind your children also to God. The dangers of rejecting religion. The teachings on values such as patience and kindness, they will be lost. Because people will not treat those matters carefully. The teachings on homosexuality, abortion, incest, and euthanasia, they will be lost. Because nobody treated those matters carefully in relation to God. And nobody taught you how to redeem yourself from those things. You just ended up being spiritual. Even pagans are spiritual. Teachings on sex, marriage, and the family, they need to be treated carefully. They need to be redemptive. They need to bind us to God. How will you do that? How will you hand over those teachings to your children? Right? And then what is the purpose of sex, the issues of lust, all of these things. How do you solve family disputes, the issues of money? What is the role of each member of your family? The issues of overworking and over responsibility. How will you handle all of these issues if what you have is just spirituality? A subjective notion. A notion that cannot be handed over to the next and to the next and to the next generation. A notion that you cannot codify. Church leaders, stop fighting religion. By fighting it, you are fighting the family, because the family will not have a codified, a lasting way of binding themselves to God and binding their children to God. Seek for pure, unspoiled religion. The Bible contemplates that. If the Bible contemplates something and you are against it, then are you a follower? So that's what I had. Thank you for watching. Please let me know what you think. Leave your comments in the comment section below. Thank you to all my 1,130 subscribers. Please subscribe to my channel and share these videos. Do not hide a light where there is darkness. I will revisit some of the issues that I mentioned, especially when it comes to the church, especially when it comes to tithing. I want to do an entire video on that. Pray for me that I may not flee for fear of the wolves.